Welcome to Nap Lab. In this narration, you are slowly drifting across the open stillness of the desert. There is nothing you need to picture clearly and nothing you need to focus on. Just allow the words to move at the same pace as the landscape itself. The desert does not rush, and neither does this voice. The desert begins without warning. One moment the land holds shape and detail, and then gradually it opens, flattening and widening until distance becomes the dominant feature. Colors soften into warm neutrals, movement fades into suggestion, and sound loses the ability to travel far. What remains is not emptiness, but space that has learned how to stay quiet. Sand stretches outward in gentle, repeating forms shaped by wind that moves slowly enough to feel like rest rather than motion. Each grain settles where it lands and remains there until change arrives naturally. Nothing here hurries to become something else. Time loosens its grip in the desert, spreading outward instead of forward, allowing moments to exist without pressure. As the sun lowers, the ground releases warmth it has been holding all day. The change in temperature is gradual and smooth, not something that demands attention. The air cools evenly, settling into a calm balance that feels predictable and safe. Above, the sky expands without boundary, uninterrupted by trees or structures. There is no ceiling here, only distance. Wind moves across the surface lightly, never insisting on being noticed. It shapes the dunes over long stretches of time, leaving patterns that appear stable and timeless. These forms rise and fall slowly, not as motion but as quiet structure. Even when the sand shifts, it does so without sound. Beneath the surface, layers of earth hold heat, minerals, and memory compressed through patience rather than force. Processes continue below without signal or urgency. Balance maintains itself quietly, cycle after cycle, unchanged by observation. Life in the desert exists without drawing attention to itself. Roots extend carefully, conserving energy, reaching only as far as needed. Movement happens mostly when the air cools, when the world feels still enough to support it. Paths appear briefly and fade again, leaving the surface undisturbed. Sound dissolves quickly here. There are no echoes to hold on to. Even silence feels spread out, even and complete. The desert absorbs vibration the way it absorbs heat, slowly and without resistance. Day transitions into night without ceremony. Light fades, shadows soften, and stars begin to appear one by one, distant and steady. They do not flicker urgently or shift suddenly. They remain just as the desert remains without asking to be interpreted. Breathing becomes slower naturally in this space, not because it is guided but because there is no urgency to match. Air enters and leaves evenly, cool and calm without effort. The horizon stays soft, never sharp enough to suggest an ending. There is no destination here, no arrival point, no conclusion. The desert continues in all directions, not as a place to cross, but as a state of stillness that allows everything else to slow down with it. And as the desert remains, so can you, resting within its quiet, unbroken presence. As you continue drifting across the desert, the sense of direction begins to fade. There is no clear forward movement here, only the feeling of being held within a wide and steady space. The landscape does not change quickly enough to mark progress, and because of that, the mind begins to loosen its grip on time. The sand beneath you feels consistent, neither hard nor soft enough to demand attention. It supports quietly, adjusting without resistance. Every step would leave a mark for a moment, but even those marks would soften and disappear, returning the surface to balance. Heat moves slowly here. During the day, warmth settles deep into the ground, spreading evenly rather than concentrating. When night arrives, that warmth releases itself back into the air gradually, creating a stable and gentle temperature that feels calm rather than cold. The desert sky remains open and patient. Without clouds or obstruction, distance becomes easier to sense than detail. There is no pressure to focus on anything specific. Your attention can drift, just like the wind, touching nothing for long. Wind itself remains subtle. It does not push or pull. It passes across the dunes quietly, rearranging the surface so slowly that motion becomes almost theoretical. Change exists, but it refuses to hurry. Below the sand, layers of earth hold minerals and heat in quiet agreement. Nothing competes for space. Nothing interrupts another process. Everything proceeds at a pace set long ago, repeated without variation. Life here survives through restraint. Roots extend cautiously, drawing just enough moisture to continue. Movement happens when conditions are gentle, and even then it remains brief. Nothing here wastes energy. Sound never accumulates. Any noise that appears dissolves almost immediately into the open space. Silence does not feel empty, it feels wide, even, and complete. As darkness settles fully, stars become more visible, spread evenly across the sky. They do not demand interpretation. They remain distant, constant, and unaffected by the stillness below them. Breathing continues to slow without effort. The body follows the environment naturally, matching its calm. Air moves in and out smoothly without pause or urgency. The horizon remains unchanged, soft and continuous. There is no edge to reach, no boundary to cross. The desert offers no destination, only ongoing stillness. And in this stillness, nothing needs to happen. There is nowhere to go, nothing to complete, and nothing to hold on to. The desert simply remains, and in doing so, it allows everything else to rest. As the desert continues around you, the sense of separation between yourself and the landscape becomes softer. There is no clear boundary between where you end and where the environment begins. Everything shares the same quiet rhythm. The surface of the desert remains unchanged, not because nothing happens, but because everything happens slowly enough to remain balanced. Sand shifts gently, guided by light wind and gravity, settling into forms that feel familiar and steady. Temperature remains even. The ground releases warmth slowly, and the air holds it without sharp contrast. There are no sudden changes here, only gradual adjustment. The sky above stays open and calm. With nothing to block the view, distance becomes more important than detail. Your attention can rest anywhere without needing to focus. Wind moves through the space softly, never pressing, never pulling. It touches the surface lightly, then continues on, leaving no urgency behind. Below the sand, layers of earth remain stable. Minerals and moisture distribute evenly, maintaining quiet equilibrium. Nothing competes and nothing overwhelms. Life remains present but understated. Roots draw what they need and then pause. Movement occurs only when conditions allow, and even then, it leaves no trace. Sound fades almost as soon as it appears. The open space absorbs it completely, leaving behind a silence that feels full and steady. Night deepens gently. Stars remain fixed in their positions, unaffected by the stillness below. They offer no direction, only consistency. Breathing continues to slow, guided by the environment rather than intention. Air moves smoothly without effort, in a rhythm that feels natural and unforced. The horizon remains distant and soft. There is no edge to reach and no endpoint to consider. The desert extends evenly in all directions. Nothing here needs to change. Nothing needs to be achieved. The desert holds its calm without effort, and in that calm, everything else can release tension. And as the desert remains steady and unhurried, it invites the same stillness to settle within you. The desert remains steady as time passes without being counted. There is no signal marking seconds or minutes, only a continuous sense of presence. Everything exists in the same moment, stretched gently outward. The air feels balanced, neither heavy nor thin. It rests against the skin without pressure, allowing awareness to soften naturally. Nothing asks for attention, so attention slowly loosens on its own. Sand holds its shape with quiet confidence. Each grain supports the next, forming patterns that seem intentional, even though no plan exists. Stability here comes from simplicity. Far below the surface, cooler layers remain untouched by the warmth above. Energy moves downward slowly, dispersing without resistance. The ground absorbs and releases heat in perfect moderation. The wind pauses often as if listening. When it moves again, it does so with care, tracing familiar paths across the dunes. Its motion never interrupts the calm. There is no need to search the distance. The horizon stays wide and unchanged, offering no destination. Vision becomes softer when there is nothing specific to find. The sky darkens gradually, not as an event, but as a natural transition. Colors fade into deeper tones, blending smoothly without contrast. Stars appear without announcement. Their light travels quietly, arriving gently and evenly. Nothing about them feels urgent or demanding. Silence settles deeper, not empty but complete. It carries weight without heaviness, creating a sense of fullness that requires nothing more. Breathing aligns with the stillness around you. Each inhale arrives naturally, each exhale leaves without effort. There is no rhythm to follow, only one that already exists. The desert continues to hold everything in balance. Nothing rushes forward. Nothing falls behind. All motion fits comfortably within the calm. And within this steady environment, awareness drifts freely, unanchored and relaxed, supported by the quiet order of the desert itself. The desert holds its silence with ease. Nothing strains to maintain it. The stillness exists naturally, like a surface that never ripples unless invited. The ground feels firm and reliable, offering quiet support. Beneath it, layers of time rest undisturbed, each one settled comfortably into the next. There is no urgency in their order. Air moves slowly now, barely noticeable, drifting as if it has nowhere else to be. It carries no scent, no signal, only a sense of openness. Thoughts, if they appear, pass through just as gently. They do not linger or demand attention. Like the wind, they arrive, move on, and dissolve into the space. The desert does not react. It simply remains. This constancy allows everything else to soften without effort. Light continues to dim, smoothing edges and removing sharp detail. Shapes become suggestions rather than definitions. The landscape feels broader, less specific. Stars remain steady above, unblinking and distant. Their presence is quiet reassurance, not guidance, not instruction. Temperature settles into balance. Neither warmth nor coolness dominates. The body adapts without needing to adjust. Sound is absent not because it is forbidden, but because it is unnecessary. Silence fills the space completely, leaving no gaps. Breathing continues, steady and calm, aligned naturally with the environment. There is nothing to control, nothing to improve. The desert extends endlessly, unchanged by observation. It offers no story to follow, only a steady state to rest within. And in that steady state, awareness loosens further, supported by the desert's quiet, enduring calm. The desert remains open and patient, as if it has always been waiting without expectation. Nothing here reacts to being observed. Nothing changes its behavior because you are present. The surface cools gradually, releasing the last traces of warmth into the air. This exchange happens slowly, evenly, without contrast. Balance restores itself naturally. Above, the sky feels deeper now. Darkness does not arrive suddenly. It settles gently, like a blanket laid carefully across the horizon. Edges blur, and distance becomes less important. The dunes appear smoother in low light. Their curves soften, becoming continuous lines rather than separate forms. There is no sharpness left to hold onto. Wind rests completely for a moment. In its absence, the desert feels even more expansive. Stillness stretches outward in every direction. Nothing moves, yet nothing feels empty. The space feels full, complete, and stable. Time passes quietly here. Without reference points, moments blend together. There is no before or after, only an ongoing sense of now. The body responds instinctively to this environment. Muscles release tension without instruction. Posture adjusts subtly, finding the most effortless position. Breathing remains slow and natural. Each breath feels sufficient, needing no extension or control. Air enters and leaves without resistance. The desert offers no stimulation, and in that absence, awareness becomes lighter. There is nothing to analyze, nothing to follow. Stars continue their distant presence, unchanged by the stillness below. Their light arrives calmly, unchanged by distance. The silence deepens further, not by becoming heavier but by becoming more complete. There is nothing missing from it. The desert holds everything in place with quiet certainty. No motion breaks the balance. No sound interrupts the calm. And within this steady, unbroken environment, the mind drifts freely, supported by the desert's endless, unhurried stillness. The desert continues without effort, unchanged by time or attention. It does not hold on to the past, and it does not prepare for what comes next. It simply remains. The air feels lighter now, cooler, resting gently against the skin. There is no contrast, no sudden shift, only a smooth transition from one state to another. The ground beneath stays firm and steady, absorbing weight evenly. Nothing sinks, nothing resists. Support is constant and reliable. Far away, the horizon dissolves further into darkness. The line between land and sky softens until it almost disappears. Space feels larger when boundaries fade. The wind does not return. Silence settles completely, uninterrupted and whole. There is no background sound, no distant movement. Stars maintain their quiet presence, evenly spaced, steady in brightness. They offer consistency rather than direction. Thoughts slow further, mirroring the stillness around them. When they appear, they move gently and pass without leaving a trace. Breathing continues in a natural rhythm, unmeasured and effortless. Each breath feels complete on its own. The desert does not demand awareness. It allows attention to drift, to rest, to become unfocused without consequence. Nothing here asks for understanding. Nothing requires interpretation. The environment exists without explanation. Time becomes irrelevant. Without markers, it loses shape and meaning. Moments stretch and blend seamlessly. The desert holds its calm without tension. It does not need to maintain it. Stillness is simply its natural state. And in this stillness, awareness settles deeper, supported by the desert's vast, steady presence. The desert rests in complete equilibrium. Nothing shifts out of place. Nothing pulls attention forward or backward. Everything stays where it belongs. The night air feels smooth and even, carrying no sharp edges. It moves gently, almost imperceptibly, allowing the environment to feel continuous and whole. The surface of the sand cools fully now, holding the temperature steady. There is no lingering warmth, no chill, only balance. Darkness becomes uniform across the landscape. Shapes lose their individuality and blend into a single, quiet form. The desert feels less like many parts and more like one vast presence. Stars remain overhead, distant and calm. Their light arrives softly, unchanged by the emptiness it crosses. Silence is complete. Not waiting, not expectant. Just present. Breathing continues without conscious effort. Each inhale and exhale flows smoothly, as if guided by the surrounding stillness. The body feels supported and at ease. There is no need to adjust or move. Everything is already aligned. Thoughts fade further into the background, becoming softer, less distinct. Awareness remains, but without focus or direction. The desert offers no narrative, no progression. It exists outside of story, outside of change. Time dissolves completely. Without movement or contrast, it no longer matters. The desert remains vast, quiet, and unwavering. It does not respond. It does not ask. And within this unchanging calm, awareness drifts gently, held securely by the desert's endless stillness. The desert remains exactly as it is, needing no adjustment. Its stillness is not fragile. It does not depend on conditions. It simply exists, steady and complete. The air feels settled, as if it has found its final position for the night. There is no movement left to notice, no shift to anticipate. Sand lies undisturbed, each grain resting comfortably where it has fallen. Nothing presses forward. Nothing pulls away. The darkness feels soft rather than heavy. It smooths everything it touches, removing detail and leaving only presence behind. Stars continue their quiet watch, unchanged and distant. Their light arrives calmly, without urgency, without demand. Silence holds the space fully now. It is not waiting for sound to return. It has no expectation. It feels finished. Breathing remains slow and natural, guided effortlessly by the calm around it. There is nothing to follow, nothing to time. The body feels still, supported, and unburdened. Tension has no reason to remain. Thoughts have almost completely faded, replaced by a simple awareness that asks nothing and offers nothing. The desert does not shift with time. It does not mark moments. It remains outside of sequence. Everything feels even, balanced, resolved. And within this quiet resolution, awareness continues to drift, held gently by the desert's endless, unwavering calm. The desert stays unchanged, as if time itself has decided to rest here. Nothing moves forward. Nothing falls behind. Everything remains suspended in a calm that feels complete. The air no longer shifts. It feels settled into place, evenly distributed, neither rising nor sinking. It simply surrounds without pressure. The ground beneath remains steady and neutral. It offers support without sensation, allowing the body to remain at ease. Darkness has fully settled now. There are no shadows left to follow, no edges left to define. The landscape exists as a single, continuous presence. Stars continue quietly above, distant and constant. Their light does not compete for attention. It simply exists. Silence feels deeper not because it grows but because nothing interrupts it. There is no anticipation, no pause, no change. Breathing continues effortlessly, smooth and unmeasured. Each breath completes itself naturally without guidance. The body remains still, aligned with the environment. There is no need to shift or respond. Everything is already in balance. Awareness feels light, unanchored. It drifts without direction, without purpose, without effort. The desert offers no signals, no cues, no rhythm to follow. It allows everything to slow to its natural state. Time no longer has shape here. Without contrast, it fades into the background, losing relevance. The desert remains vast, quiet, and steady. It does not begin. It does not end. And within this steady stillness, awareness continues to rest, supported completely by the desert's endless calm. The desert remains effortlessly still, as if it has always existed in this exact state. Nothing has been added and nothing has been removed. Balance feels permanent here. The air feels weightless now, evenly surrounding everything without motion or intent. It does not flow or pause. It simply is. The surface beneath holds its quiet firmness, unchanged and dependable. There is no sensation calling for attention, no signal asking for response. Darkness feels complete, no longer arriving or deepening. It has settled fully, smoothing the landscape into a single, uninterrupted presence. Stars remain distant and constant. Their light reaches the ground gently, without emphasis, without variation. Silence is absolute. It does not echo. It does not fade. It remains whole and undisturbed. Breathing continues naturally, barely noticeable, unfolding without effort. Each breath feels sufficient, requiring nothing more. The body feels neutral and supported, free from tension or adjustment. Everything rests exactly where it should. Awareness drifts softly, without direction or focus. There is no need to observe or interpret. Presence alone is enough. The desert does not signal time. There are no transitions, no markers, no progression. Everything feels settled, resolved, quietly complete. And within this complete stillness, awareness remains at rest, held gently by the desert's endless, unchanging calm. The desert remains open and steady, as if the idea of movement has slowly dissolved. Nothing urges the space forward and nothing pulls it back. Everything rests in a quiet agreement. The air feels evenly distributed, touching everything without preference. It does not cool or warm noticeably. It simply maintains balance, allowing the environment to remain unchanged. The ground beneath holds its form with complete confidence. There is no shifting, no settling left to do. Each grain of sand rests comfortably against the next, forming a surface that feels stable and certain. Darkness continues to soften the landscape, removing the last traces of distinction. Dunes blend into one another, becoming part of a single, continuous expanse. The desert feels less like a place and more like a state. Stars remain present above, fixed and distant. Their light arrives quietly, without rhythm or pattern, offering consistency rather than direction. Silence deepens not by growing heavier, but by becoming more complete. There is no space left for interruption. Nothing competes with it. Breathing remains slow and unforced. Air enters and leaves naturally, guided by the calm that surrounds everything. There is no effort in this motion, no need for awareness. The body feels fully supported, as if the environment itself has taken over the task of holding it. Muscles remain relaxed, with no reason to engage or release further. Thoughts, if they appear, feel distant and faint. They pass through without forming structure, dissolving before they can take shape. Time has no presence here. Without change or contrast, it loses meaning entirely. Moments stretch and merge until they no longer feel separate. The desert does not invite focus. It does not encourage exploration. It simply allows everything to remain exactly as it is. Temperature stays balanced, neutral and steady. There are no fluctuations to notice, no adjustments required. The sky remains vast and quiet, holding the stars in their fixed positions. Nothing shifts. Nothing signals transition. Silence feels gentle and complete, filling the space without weight. It does not demand attention. It does not ask to be noticed. Awareness continues to drift, light and unanchored. There is no direction to follow, no point to reach. The desert holds this state effortlessly, without tension or maintenance. Stillness is not something it achieves. It is simply what it is. And within this unbroken calm, awareness remains suspended, supported fully by the desert's endless, steady presence. The desert continues in perfect stillness, as if it has moved beyond the need to change. Nothing here waits for the next moment. Nothing anticipates what follows. The present feels wide and complete. The air remains calm and evenly spread, resting gently without motion. It does not stir or settle further. It simply stays. The surface of the desert holds its quiet firmness, unchanged and dependable. There is no sound beneath it, no movement below, only steady support. Darkness feels fully established now, no longer deepening or shifting. It smooths the landscape into a single unified presence without edges or contrast. Stars remain fixed in the sky, distant and unhurried. Their light arrives evenly, unchanged by time or distance. Silence feels natural, unbroken and full. It does not wait for sound to return. It has no expectation. Breathing continues effortlessly, slow and unmeasured. Each breath completes itself without guidance or intention. The body remains still, comfortable and supported. There is no reason to move. Everything feels aligned. Thoughts drift quietly, barely forming before dissolving. They do not demand attention or follow a pattern. Time no longer feels relevant. Without transitions or markers, it fades completely from awareness. The desert offers no direction, no story, no sequence. It remains outside of narrative. Everything feels settled, resolved, and stable. And within this quiet resolution, awareness continues to rest, gently held by the desert's vast, unchanging calm. The desert remains unchanged, as if it exists beyond the reach of time itself. Nothing moves toward a future. Nothing drifts away from the past. Everything stays gently balanced. The air feels neutral and still, surrounding everything evenly. It carries no signal, no direction, no urgency. The ground beneath remains firm and reliable, offering steady support without sensation. Nothing presses down and nothing pushes back. Darkness continues to rest across the landscape, smooth and even. There are no shadows left to follow, no forms left to distinguish. Stars remain distant and constant, their presence quiet and reassuring. They do not flicker or fade. They simply remain. Silence feels complete, uninterrupted, and whole. It does not expand or contract. It simply holds. Breathing continues naturally, soft and unforced. Each breath arrives and leaves without effort. The body feels settled and at ease, with no tension left to release. Everything rests exactly as it should. Thoughts have softened further, becoming faint impressions rather than ideas. They drift through and disappear quietly. Time has fully dissolved here. Without change, it no longer has shape or meaning. The desert does not invite movement or attention. It allows everything to remain at rest. Everything feels stable, quiet, and resolved. And within this steady stillness, awareness remains calm and suspended, supported by the desert's endless, unwavering presence. The desert continues to exist in a state of complete calm, as if the idea of motion has gently faded away. Nothing stirs and nothing needs to. The air remains perfectly still, evenly present in every direction. It does not rise or fall. It simply surrounds. The ground beneath stays firm and unchanged, offering quiet stability. There is no shift, no settling left to notice. Darkness feels smooth and consistent, resting gently across the entire landscape. It removes contrast, leaving only presence behind. Stars remain distant and steady above, their light arriving softly without variation or rhythm. Silence holds everything in place, unbroken and full. It does not invite sound. It does not wait. Breathing continues in its natural flow, slow and effortless. Each breath completes itself without awareness. The body feels neutral and fully supported, free from tension or movement. Everything remains at ease. Thoughts have become rare and faint, dissolving before they can take form. Time no longer exists here. Without change or markers, it has no meaning. The desert offers no cues, no direction, no narrative. It simply remains. Everything feels settled, calm, and complete. And within this complete stillness, awareness continues to rest, held gently by the desert's endless calm. The desert stays exactly as it is, without effort, without intention. It does not try to remain still. Stillness is simply its natural condition. The air feels evenly balanced, resting everywhere at once. There is no movement left to notice, no shift waiting to happen. The surface beneath remains quiet and dependable, holding its shape without resistance. Nothing presses into it. Nothing pulls away. Darkness feels fully settled now, no longer arriving or changing. It smooths the landscape into one continuous presence, free of edges. Stars remain above, distant and unchanged. Their light reaches the ground gently, without urgency, without pattern. Silence feels complete and stable. It does not deepen or fade. It simply holds the space as it is. Breathing continues on its own, slow and natural. There is no need to follow it. It flows without guidance. The body feels still and supported, as if the environment itself is holding everything in place. There is no tension left to release. Thoughts barely form now. When they do, they pass through softly, leaving no trace behind. Time has no shape here. Without contrast or motion, it fades entirely from awareness. The desert does not invite attention. It does not resist it either. It remains neutral and open. Everything feels balanced, quiet, and resolved. And within this quiet balance, awareness rests effortlessly, supported by the desert's endless, unchanging calm. The desert remains steady as if nothing has ever disturbed it. There is no sense of arrival or departure here. Everything feels gently fixed in place. The air stays calm and evenly spread, touching everything lightly without motion. It carries no temperature change, no signal, no direction. The ground beneath feels firm and quiet, offering support without sensation. It does not respond. It simply holds. Darkness rests comfortably across the landscape, no longer changing or shifting. The desert feels unified, smooth and continuous. Stars remain distant and still, their light reaching the ground softly, unchanged by the silence below. Silence feels complete and effortless. It does not grow or shrink. It remains exactly as it is. Breathing continues naturally, slow and smooth without awareness or control. Each breath feels complete on its own. The body remains at rest, fully supported and relaxed. There is no need to move or adjust. Thoughts have faded almost entirely, leaving behind a quiet sense of presence without focus. Time no longer feels relevant. Without movement or contrast, it dissolves completely. The desert offers no narrative, no progression, no destination. It simply exists. Everything feels settled, calm and resolved. And within this settled stillness, awareness continues to rest quietly, supported by the desert's endless, unwavering calm. Deserts are often misunderstood as empty places, but in reality they are defined not by what they lack, but by how carefully they balance what they have. The defining feature of a desert is not heat, but low precipitation. Some deserts are hot, some are cold, and some experience dramatic temperature shifts between day and night. What unites all deserts is scarcity. Rainfall arrives rarely, sometimes only a few times each year. When it does arrive, it often comes suddenly, soaking the surface before disappearing again into evaporation or porous ground. Because water is limited, desert ecosystems operate with extreme efficiency. Plants grow slowly, conserving energy. Many store water internally, using thick stems or waxy surfaces to reduce loss. Others remain dormant for long periods, waiting patiently for the right conditions. Animals too adapt by minimizing exposure. Many are nocturnal, emerging only after sunset when temperatures drop. Others burrow beneath the surface, where conditions remain more stable and moisture lasts longer. The soil of a desert is not lifeless. Beneath the surface, microorganisms remain active, processing nutrients slowly and steadily. Biological soil crusts, made of bacteria, fungi, and lichens, help stabilize the ground and retain what little moisture arrives. Temperature variation is one of the desert's most defining traits. Without clouds to trap heat, days can become warm while nights cool rapidly. This constant expansion and contraction shapes the land over long periods of time. Wind plays a major role in desert formation. It carries fine particles across vast distances, slowly sculpting dunes and smoothing rock surfaces. Over thousands of years, even solid stone yields to this gentle persistence. Some deserts were once seas, forests, or grasslands. Geological shifts, changes in ocean currents and mountain formation altered climate patterns, gradually reducing rainfall. What remains is not ruin but transformation. Deserts cover nearly 1/3 of Earth's land surface. From the Sahara to the Gobi, from Antarctica's dry valleys to the American Southwest, they exist in many forms, each shaped by its own balance of temperature, wind, and time. Despite their quiet appearance, deserts are deeply connected to global systems. Dust carried from deserts can fertilize distant rainforests. Temperature differences influence atmospheric circulation. Even the silence participates in Earth's larger rhythm. And as this knowledge settles gently, the desert remains unchanged, steady, patient, and balanced, holding both stillness and complexity at the same time. Deserts can be grouped into several types, each shaped by a different balance of climate and geography. Hot deserts, like the Sahara, form where dry air descends and suppresses cloud formation. Cold deserts, such as parts of Central Asia, experience low precipitation but long, cold winters. Coastal deserts develop near cold ocean currents that limit rainfall, while polar deserts remain dry because frozen air holds very little moisture. Despite these differences, all deserts share a similar rhythm. Water arrives rarely, and when it does, it reshapes the environment quickly. Dry riverbeds, called wadis or arroyos, remain empty for long periods, then briefly carry water before returning to stillness. Over time, this cycle creates landscapes that feel ancient and deliberate. Canyons form slowly as rare floods carve into stone. Flat plains develop where wind and erosion remove fine material, leaving behind smooth, open surfaces. Desert geology often reveals layers of Earth's history more clearly than other environments. Without vegetation to cover them, rock formations remain exposed, showing patterns created millions of years ago. Each layer tells a quiet story of pressure, heat, and gradual change. The night sky in the desert is among the clearest on Earth. With little moisture and minimal light pollution, stars appear sharper and more numerous. For thousands of years, people used desert skies to track time, seasons, and direction. Navigation in deserts relied not on landmarks but on patterns. The movement of stars, the position of the sun, and the direction of prevailing winds provided guidance across vast, featureless terrain. Human presence in deserts has always required adaptation. Settlements formed near reliable water sources, oases, rivers, or underground aquifers. Architecture evolved to manage heat, using thick walls and narrow openings to maintain balance. Trade routes crossed deserts not despite their difficulty, but because their openness allowed long-distance travel. Caravans moved slowly, guided by knowledge passed down over generations. Even today, deserts influence technology and science. They are used to study climate change, planetary geology, and even conditions on Mars. Their simplicity makes them ideal for understanding complex systems. And through all of this history and information, the desert itself remains calm and unchanged, quietly holding layers of time, movement, and meaning beneath its still surface. Life in the desert follows a rhythm that is shaped entirely by conservation. Energy is never wasted, and movement is always measured. Plants and animals have evolved not to thrive through abundance, but through restraint. Many desert plants open their pores only at night, reducing water loss during the heat of the day. Some extend roots deep into the ground, while others spread them wide across the surface, capturing even the smallest trace of moisture. Seeds can remain dormant for years, waiting patiently for rainfall. When conditions are right, growth happens quickly, transforming the landscape for a brief moment before returning to stillness. Animals mirror this efficiency. Reptiles regulate temperature through behavior rather than internal control, moving between sun and shade. Mammals conserve water through highly concentrated urine and minimal sweating. Insects play a crucial role in desert ecosystems. They break down organic material, pollinate plants, and support food webs, all while remaining mostly unseen. Sound travels differently in the desert. With little vegetation to absorb it, noise can carry far, yet the absence of constant movement keeps the environment quiet. Silence here is not emptiness, but stability. Wind continues to shape the land gradually. Over long periods, it polishes rock surfaces and builds dunes that shift slowly, almost imperceptibly. These changes happen on a scale that feels timeless. Deserts also act as natural archives. Tracks left in sand reveal brief moments of movement, footprints, paths, crossings, before they are erased and return to neutrality. Human cultures adapted by observing these patterns closely. Knowledge of weather signs, animal behavior, and seasonal shifts became essential for survival. Even modern science relies on deserts to study extreme environments. Their conditions help researchers understand resilience, adaptation, and long-term change. And as this information settles, the desert remains steady and quiet, unchanged by understanding or attention, continuing its calm existence without interruption. Water, when it appears in the desert, becomes the central organizer of life. Even the smallest source creates patterns of movement and rest around it. An oasis is not just a pool of water, but a system where plants, animals, and people align their rhythms. Underground aquifers often feed these oases, slowly releasing water collected over thousands of years. This hidden circulation allows life to exist on the surface without constant rainfall. Desert rivers are often temporary. They remain dry for long periods, then briefly carry water across vast distances. These moments reshape the land quickly, depositing nutrients before disappearing again. Salt flats form where water evaporates faster than it can drain away. Over time, minerals concentrate at the surface, creating smooth, reflective expanses that appear almost motionless. Deserts also influence weather far beyond their boundaries. Heated air rises during the day, affecting atmospheric circulation. Dust lifted into the sky can travel across continents, altering cloud formation and soil fertility elsewhere. At night, cooling happens rapidly. Heat stored in the ground radiates upward, allowing temperatures to drop. This cycle repeats daily, steady and predictable. Human navigation in deserts depended on patience and observation. Travelers learned to move during cooler hours, rest during peak heat, and read subtle signs in the land. Even today, satellite technology reveals how deserts shift slowly over decades. Dunes migrate, vegetation boundaries move, and ancient river paths become visible again. Despite all this motion and influence, the desert maintains a sense of stillness. Change occurs, but it unfolds quietly without urgency. Information settles gently here, just like sand. Each detail finds its place without disturbing the whole. And as understanding deepens, the desert remains calm, balanced, and unhurried, continuing its steady presence beneath the open sky. Deserts are also shaped by light in a way few other environments are. With minimal cloud cover, sunlight reaches the ground directly, creating clear transitions between day and night. This sharp clarity influences how heat is stored and released across the land. During the day, surfaces absorb solar energy steadily. At night, that energy escapes back into the atmosphere, allowing the environment to reset. This daily cycle maintains the desert's balance. Colors in the desert appear muted yet precise. Without dense vegetation, tones of sand, stone, and sky dominate the view. These colors change slowly with the angle of the sun, never abruptly. Sound remains rare, but when it appears, it carries far. Footsteps, wind, or distant movement can travel across open ground before fading back into silence. Some deserts contain ancient lakes now dried into flat basins. Their shorelines remain visible as gentle curves etched into the land, marking where water once rested. Fossils found in desert regions reveal past climates very different from today. These records show forests, wetlands, and oceans where sand now lies, reminding us that environments transform over deep time. Modern technology often returns to deserts for testing and observation. Their openness allows clear signals, stable conditions, and minimal interference. Deserts also provide psychological stillness. The lack of visual clutter and constant noise allows the mind to slow naturally, responding to the environment's simplicity. This is why deserts have long been associated with reflection, travel, and quiet endurance. Their calm invites observation without demand. As these ideas settle, the desert itself remains unchanged, holding light, heat, time, and silence in careful balance. Deserts also shape the way time is perceived. Without frequent change in weather or scenery, days feel longer and more continuous. The absence of sudden events allows awareness to settle into a slower rhythm. This slower rhythm influences everything that lives there. Growth is measured in seasons rather than days. Change is noticed only after long intervals, making patience an essential feature of the landscape. Many desert rocks are shaped by a process called thermal stress. Repeated heating and cooling causes them to expand and contract, slowly fracturing over thousands of cycles. No single moment causes the change. It is the repetition that matters. Wind abrasion further smooths these surfaces. Fine particles carried by air polish stone gradually, rounding edges and softening contours. Over time, even the hardest materials respond. Deserts are also important records of climate history. Layers of sediment preserve information about ancient winds, rainfall patterns, and temperature shifts. Scientists read these layers like quiet pages in a long book. In some deserts, fog replaces rain as a source of moisture. Coastal deserts receive water from low clouds that drift inland, condensing on surfaces and sustaining life without precipitation. Human survival strategies adapted to these subtle sources. Nets, stone channels, and carefully placed shelters allowed people to collect and preserve minimal moisture. Even modern cities in desert regions follow similar principles. Architecture emphasizes shade, airflow, and thermal mass to maintain balance with the environment. Despite technological advances, deserts continue to set limits. They remind us that adaptation works best when it aligns with natural rhythms rather than resisting them. Through all of this, the desert remains calm and unassertive. It does not announce its lessons. It simply demonstrates them over time. As this understanding settles quietly, the desert continues its steady presence, unchanged, patient, and balanced beneath the open sky. Deserts play an important role in regulating Earth's systems, even though they appear still. Their surfaces reflect and absorb sunlight in specific ways, influencing regional temperatures and atmospheric circulation. Dust lifted from deserts can travel thousands of kilometers. These fine particles carry minerals that fertilize distant oceans and forests, quietly supporting ecosystems far away. Desert margins, where dry land meets more humid regions, are especially dynamic. Small shifts in climate can move these boundaries slowly over decades, altering vegetation patterns. Many deserts experience brief seasonal blooms. After rare rains, dormant seeds awaken, covering the land with color for a short time before returning to rest. These moments remind us that life remains present even when hidden. Animals time their activity carefully. Some rely on temperature cues, others on light or humidity. Each movement is efficient, guided by survival rather than excess. The desert sky continues to serve as a natural clock. The slow arc of stars, the steady rise and fall of the moon, and the predictable path of the sun provide orientation without instruments. Cultural traditions that developed in deserts often emphasize memory, observation, and oral knowledge. Information was preserved through repetition, much like the land preserves form through stability. Modern research stations in deserts study extreme conditions, using them as analogs for space exploration. The simplicity of the environment allows clear insight into complex systems. Despite these layers of activity and influence, the desert maintains its quiet character. It does not reveal its workings quickly. Understanding comes slowly over time. As this information settles, the desert remains calm and unchanged, continuing its steady existence without interruption. Deserts continue to influence human imagination precisely because they do not overwhelm the senses. With fewer sounds, fewer colors, and fewer sudden changes, attention naturally settles into a slower, steadier state. This simplicity allows the mind to rest. Without constant input, awareness becomes broader rather than sharper. Many people describe a sense of mental quiet when exposed to open desert landscapes. Historically, deserts became places of long journeys rather than permanent movement. Travel through them required preparation, patience, and trust in natural rhythms. Speed was never the goal, endurance was. Water storage techniques evolved carefully. Clay vessels, underground cisterns, and shaded reservoirs helped preserve moisture over long periods. Each method reflected respect for limitation rather than an attempt to overcome it. The desert also teaches the value of spacing. Settlements are rarely dense. Distance between structures allows airflow, reduces heat buildup, and preserves comfort without constant intervention. Light behaves differently here. With little moisture in the air, it remains clean and direct. Shadows appear defined during the day, then disappear completely at night, leaving the land evenly dark. Deserts are often chosen for observatories because of this clarity. Astronomers rely on the stable air and clear skies to observe distant objects without interference. Even the colors of the desert contribute to calm. Earth tones dominate, changing slowly with the angle of the sun. Nothing flashes or demands attention. Over centuries, these qualities shaped cultural expressions. Music with long pauses, stories told slowly, traditions preserved through repetition. The desert does not reward urgency. It responds only to patience and observation. As this understanding settles gently, the desert remains unchanged, quiet, balanced, and steady, continuing its role as both environment and teacher. Deserts also influence how humans understand scale. With few objects to measure distance against, the land feels larger and movement feels slower. A short walk can appear long, and a distant feature can seem closer than it is. This distortion of scale encourages caution. Travelers learn to conserve energy, to rest often, and to move with intention rather than impulse. The desert sun follows a predictable path, rising and setting with little variation throughout the year. This consistency allows life to synchronize easily with light rather than clocks. At night, temperatures stabilize quickly. The cooling process is gradual and even, allowing organisms to rest without sudden change. Some desert animals use the ground itself to regulate temperature, pressing close to the surface or retreating below it to maintain balance. The absence of dense vegetation allows erosion to expose rare minerals and formations. Many deserts are rich in geological diversity, revealing structures hidden elsewhere. Human technology continues to borrow from desert principles. Passive cooling, minimalism, and efficient resource use are increasingly relevant in modern design. Even silence in the desert has a structure. It is not empty but layered, wind at a distance, subtle shifts in air, faint echoes that fade quickly. The desert never overwhelms the senses. It allows perception to slow and broaden, creating space for rest. As these ideas unfold, the desert remains exactly as it is, quiet, open, and enduring. Deserts are also deeply connected to Earth's long-term climate balance. Because they respond quickly to changes in temperature and precipitation, they act as early indicators of environmental shifts. When rainfall patterns change slightly, desert boundaries move. Vegetation lines advance or retreat over years rather than centuries, making these regions sensitive to climate variation. Desert soils store carbon differently than forests or grasslands. With less organic matter, carbon cycles more slowly, remaining locked in mineral forms for long periods. Many deserts contain ancient wind patterns preserved in layered sands and rock formations. These patterns help scientists reconstruct past atmospheric conditions. In cold deserts, ice remains trapped beneath dry surfaces, preserved for thousands of years. These frozen layers hold records of past climates, similar to ice cores in polar regions. Deserts also play a role in shaping human migration. Routes across dry regions influence trade, cultural exchange, and the spread of ideas. Even today, major transportation corridors often follow ancient desert paths, chosen for their openness and predictability. Technological infrastructure frequently uses deserts because of their stability. Solar farms, observatories, and research facilities benefit from consistent conditions. Despite increased human activity, deserts remain resilient. Their ecosystems recover slowly but steadily, maintaining balance over long timescales. Understanding deserts requires patience. Their processes are subtle, unfolding quietly without dramatic signals. And as this information settles gently, the desert continues its calm existence, unchanged by attention, steady beneath the open sky. Deserts also influence how water moves across the planet. Even though rainfall is rare when it does occur, the lack of vegetation allows water to travel quickly across the surface. This brief movement redistributes minerals and shapes the land. Because evaporation rates are high, surface water disappears rapidly, leaving behind traces in the form of salt deposits and smooth channels. These features remain visible long after the water has gone. Some deserts contain hidden wetlands fed by underground flows. These areas support unique species found nowhere else, existing quietly beneath the surface. Desert winds follow seasonal patterns. Over time they create corridors of movement that shape dunes and direct sand flow. These patterns can remain stable for centuries. In many regions, deserts expand and contract naturally. This movement is not sudden or catastrophic, but gradual, reflecting long-term climate rhythms. Human observation of deserts led to early understanding of astronomy and geometry. Open horizons and predictable skies allowed precise measurements of time and space. Traditional desert navigation relied on minimal cues, star positions, wind direction, and subtle land features. These methods required attention and calm rather than speed. Modern remote sensing continues this tradition, using satellites to read subtle changes in surface texture and temperature. Despite all these layers of interaction, deserts maintain their quiet presence. Their influence is broad, but their expression remains subtle. As this knowledge settles, the desert continues unchanged, balanced, patient, and enduring. Deserts also teach efficiency in energy use. With limited resources, every process operates close to balance. Nothing grows faster than conditions allow, and nothing persists without purpose. Photosynthesis in desert plants often occurs in modified cycles that reduce water loss. These adaptations allow survival under conditions that would overwhelm other systems. Desert animals often rely on behavioral strategies rather than physiological ones. Timing activity carefully reduces exposure and conserves energy. The absence of constant noise allows even small sounds to become meaningful. A single movement stands out briefly, then fades back into stillness. Deserts often appear static, but they are continuously shaped by invisible forces. Temperature gradients, pressure differences, and slow erosion guide long-term change. Human fascination with deserts continues in literature, science, and exploration. Their openness invites reflection rather than distraction. Large-scale energy projects increasingly turn to deserts, drawn by consistent sunlight and available space. Despite technological presence, deserts retain their identity. Their scale absorbs human structures without losing equilibrium. Understanding deserts encourages respect for limits rather than dominance over them. And as this information settles gently, the desert remains calm, steady, and unhurried, continuing its quiet existence beneath the open sky. Deserts reveal their complexity most clearly when observed over long periods of time. What appears unchanged in a single moment slowly transforms across years, decades, and centuries. The absence of rapid growth allows underlying processes to become visible. Erosion in deserts works differently than in humid regions. Instead of constant water flow, rare but intense rainfall events move large amounts of material at once. These sudden shifts carve channels, redistribute sediment, and then stop entirely, leaving the land to rest again. Wind erosion continues even when water is absent. Fine particles move first, lifting gently and traveling long distances. Heavier grains roll or slide along the surface, creating ripples and dunes that migrate slowly. Dunes themselves are not fixed structures. They move gradually, guided by prevailing winds and seasonal changes. Some remain stable for long periods, while others shift almost continuously. Desert pavements form when wind removes fine particles, leaving behind a layer of closely packed stones. This surface protects the ground beneath from further erosion, acting as a natural stabilizing layer. Temperature extremes shape materials over time. Rocks expand during the day and contract at night, creating internal stress. Over thousands of cycles, fractures develop, and solid stone slowly breaks apart. Biological activity remains subtle but persistent. Microorganisms live within soil crusts, stabilizing surfaces and preventing excessive erosion. These living layers are fragile, yet resilient when left undisturbed. Desert ecosystems recover slowly from disturbance. Because growth rates are low, damage can last decades. This slow recovery emphasizes the importance of balance and minimal impact. Human history in deserts reflects adaptation rather than domination. Early communities learned to align with seasonal rhythms, using architecture, clothing, and travel patterns that reduce strain on both people and environment. Trade routes crossing deserts connected distant civilizations. Goods, ideas, and knowledge moved slowly but reliably along paths shaped by geography and experience. Modern science continues to learn from deserts. Their extreme conditions provide insight into climate resilience, planetary geology, and sustainable resource use. Deserts are often compared to other planets because of their openness and dryness. Research conducted here informs exploration beyond Earth, helping us understand environments where life is limited but possible. Light pollution remains low in most desert regions, preserving natural night skies. This clarity allows both scientific observation and a deep sense of quiet connection. Psychologically, deserts encourage stillness. The lack of constant input reduces mental strain, allowing attention to soften and settle naturally. Even today, deserts remain places of retreat, reflection, and long journeys. They do not invite speed. They reward patience. And as this extended understanding settles gently, the desert remains unchanged, quiet, balanced, and enduring, holding time, motion, and silence in steady harmony. Deserts also provide insight into how ecosystems function when resources are minimal. Every interaction becomes visible because there is little excess to hide it. Energy moves slowly through the system, passing carefully from one organism to another. Food chains in deserts are often shorter. Fewer layers mean that balance is easier to disrupt, but also easier to observe. Each species plays a clearly defined role. Scavengers are especially important in desert environments. They ensure that limited nutrients are quickly recycled rather than lost. Nothing remains unused for long. The desert floor often preserves traces of life in remarkable detail. Footprints, tracks, and trails remain visible until erased by wind, offering brief records of movement. Seasonal changes are subtle but meaningful. Slight shifts in temperature or humidity can trigger activity across multiple species at once. Some desert regions experience fog rather than rain. This moisture condenses on plant surfaces and drips into the soil, providing enough water to sustain life. Human survival strategies in deserts relied heavily on memory and shared knowledge. Routes, water sources, and seasonal patterns were preserved through oral tradition. Desert architecture emphasizes thermal mass and airflow. Thick walls absorb heat during the day and release it slowly at night, maintaining comfort without energy input. Modern sustainable design increasingly draws inspiration from these principles, applying them to urban environments worldwide. Deserts also host unique soundscapes. Long periods of silence are occasionally interrupted by brief, distant sounds that fade quickly, restoring calm. The vastness of deserts influences perception of self and space. Without boundaries, attention shifts inward, allowing reflection without distraction. Despite increased scientific understanding, deserts retain an element of mystery. Their processes operate slowly, revealing themselves only to those who observe patiently. As this knowledge settles gently, the desert continues its steady existence, quiet, open, and balanced beneath the sky. Deserts also shape how memory exists in a landscape. With few permanent marks, change becomes easier to notice when it finally occurs. A new track, a shifted dune, or a faint line of vegetation stands out clearly against the familiar stillness. Because of this, deserts encourage careful observation. People who live or travel through them learn to notice subtle differences, Slight color shifts in the sand, changes in wind direction, or variations in light that signal approaching weather. Rain, when it comes, rarely arrives gently. Short, intense storms release water faster than the ground can absorb it. For a brief time, the desert moves quickly, channels filling and surfaces reshaping, before returning again to calm. These moments of activity are short-lived but powerful. They redistribute nutrients and reset parts of the ecosystem, allowing life to continue its slow cycle. Desert plants often rely on timing rather than growth. Some complete their entire life cycle within weeks after rain, leaving seeds behind before conditions return to dryness. Animals respond just as precisely. Burrows open, movement increases, and activity peaks briefly, then fades as resources diminish. Desert soils develop layers over long periods. Beneath the surface, compacted sediments preserve moisture and temperature more consistently than the air above. In some regions, ancient riverbeds remain visible from above, tracing paths that once carried water across vast distances. These ghost rivers remind us that landscapes evolve continuously, even when change feels slow. Deserts also influence regional weather by heating air masses that rise and travel elsewhere. This movement affects wind patterns, rainfall distribution, and temperature beyond the desert itself. Human technology increasingly mirrors desert strategies, using passive systems, reducing waste, and prioritizing efficiency over speed. The desert teaches that stability does not come from abundance, but from balance. Survival depends on restraint, timing, and awareness. And as these ideas settle quietly, the desert remains exactly as it is, steady, open, and patient, holding time and motion in gentle equilibrium. As the night deepens in the desert, temperatures continue to fall, and the ground slowly releases the heat it stored during the day. This exchange between earth and sky happens every night, unnoticed, yet essential. It is part of a balance that has existed long before observation. The stars above deserts are not simply visible, they dominate the sky. Without clouds or artificial light, the Milky Way stretches clearly from horizon to horizon. Ancient travelers relied on this clarity, memorizing star patterns to guide long journeys across seemingly endless terrain. Desert soil, though it appears lifeless, contains complex layers. Beneath the surface, microorganisms wait in a dormant state, activating only when rare rainfall arrives. When it does, life responds rapidly, blooming, reproducing, and completing entire cycles in a matter of days. This ability to pause and resume is one of the desert's defining traits. Nothing is rushed, yet nothing is wasted. Energy is conserved, timing is precise, and survival depends on patience rather than abundance. Rain in the desert is rarely gentle. Storms arrive suddenly, releasing large amounts of water in a short time. Dry riverbeds, called wadis or arroyos, can flood within minutes. These brief flows reshape the land, carrying sediments, carving channels, and then disappearing again. After rainfall, the air itself changes. Scents of minerals and dry vegetation rise from the ground. The atmosphere feels heavier, quieter, as if the land is absorbing what it has been given. Desert plants reveal hidden strategies. Some seeds remain buried for decades, waiting for the right conditions. Others germinate quickly, grow, flower, and release seeds all within a few weeks. Their existence is brief but perfectly timed. Cacti and succulents store water in thick tissues, their surfaces designed to reduce evaporation. Spines provide shade and protection, while also guiding condensed moisture toward the base of the plant. Animals follow similar patterns. Reptiles regulate body temperature by moving between sun and shade. Small mammals remain underground during the day, emerging only when temperatures are safer. Even insects adjust activity to specific hours, aligned precisely with environmental conditions. Movement across the desert is rarely straight. Wind shapes dunes that shift constantly, altering paths from one day to the next. These dunes behave like slow waves, migrating across the landscape over years and centuries. Different types of deserts exist, each shaped by location and climate. Hot deserts near the equator, cold deserts near polar regions, coastal deserts shaped by ocean currents, and high-altitude deserts where thin air adds another layer of challenge. Despite their differences, all deserts share a relationship with scarcity. This scarcity sharpens systems, removes excess, and reveals what is truly necessary. Human cultures that developed in deserts learned to read subtle signals. The color of the sky, the direction of wind, the behavior of animals, all served as information. Survival depended on observation and memory rather than control. Trade routes across deserts connected distant civilizations. Caravans carried not only goods but ideas, languages, and technologies. The desert, often seen as a barrier, became a bridge. Even today, deserts influence global systems. Dust from large deserts travels across oceans, delivering nutrients to distant forests and seas. These invisible connections link arid lands to ecosystems thousands of kilometers away. Satellites now observe deserts from above, tracking movement, temperature, and change. Yet despite advanced technology, the desert remains resistant to full prediction. Its processes are slow, complex, and deeply interconnected. And as these thoughts unfold, the desert continues in its quiet way. Not demanding attention, not offering comfort, simply existing. In that existence, it teaches a lesson that does not need words, that endurance comes from balance, and that silence can hold immense depth. As the hours pass, the desert settles into a deeper stillness. Wind slows, temperatures stabilize, and the land enters a brief equilibrium before morning returns. This quiet period is not empty, it is a pause built into the system, a necessary moment of rest. In this stillness, even small details become noticeable. The texture of sand changes as moisture from the air lightly settles on its surface. Footprints made hours earlier remain intact, preserved by the absence of disturbance. Time feels less segmented here, stretching into something smoother and more continuous. Desert sand itself is not uniform. Each grain carries a history shaped by erosion, transport, and collision. Some grains are rounded by long journeys, others sharp from recent fractures. Together, they form surfaces that respond differently to wind and light. Rock deserts tell another story. Vast plains of stone reflect sunlight intensely during the day and release heat slowly at night. These areas are often older than sandy regions, their surfaces shaped by millions of years of weathering rather than constant movement. Mountains rising from deserts create their own microclimates. On one side, moist air may rise and cool, releasing rare precipitation. On the other, dry air descends, intensifying aridity. These contrasts can exist within short distances, creating unexpected pockets of life. Oases form where underground water reaches the surface. They are not accidents but results of geological structure. Fault lines, porous rock layers, and pressure gradients guide water upward. Around these points, vegetation concentrates, forming islands of green within vast open space. Historically, oases determined travel routes and settlement locations. They became centers of exchange, rest, and survival. Stories, songs, and traditions often emerged around these places, shaped by gratitude for reliable water. Desert skies during the early morning shift gradually from deep blue to pale gold. This transition is slow and predictable, offering a sense of continuity. Animals that remained hidden during the night begin to retreat again as daylight returns. Birds in deserts often migrate seasonally, arriving only when conditions allow. Their presence is temporary yet precisely timed. They leave minimal impact, blending into the larger rhythm rather than altering it. Even the color palette of the desert is intentional. Earth tones dominate, reflecting and absorbing light efficiently. Bright colors appear only briefly, often during flowering events triggered by rain. These moments feel rare because they are. Deserts also influence human psychology. Extended exposure to open horizons can alter perception of distance and time. Without visual clutter, the mind begins to simplify, releasing unnecessary tension. This is why deserts have long been associated with reflection and retreat. Many cultures viewed them as places to step away from complexity, to reset thought patterns, and to listen without interruption. Modern science continues to study deserts for insights into resilience. Research into drought-resistant crops, efficient water use, and passive temperature control often draws inspiration from desert systems. Even space exploration looks to deserts for preparation. Astronaut training, rover testing, and habitat design frequently take place in arid regions that resemble conditions on other planets. Yet despite all analysis, the desert remains something that must be experienced rather than explained. Its lessons unfold slowly, requiring attention and patience. And as this understanding gently forms, the desert remains unchanged. It does not react, does not respond. It simply continues, offering space, silence, and time, allowing the mind to slow and eventually to rest. As morning fully arrives, sunlight spreads evenly across the desert floor, revealing details that were hidden in darkness. Subtle color variations appear in the sand and stone, each shaped by mineral content and age. Nothing here is random. Every shade reflects a specific history. Heat builds gradually. Unlike sudden changes, the desert teaches transitions. The rising temperature does not rush, allowing life to adjust step by step. This predictability is essential for survival in an environment where margins are narrow. Desert winds often strengthen as the day progresses. These winds follow patterns created by pressure differences between heated land and cooler surrounding areas. Over time, they become reliable signals rather than threats. Dunes respond to wind direction, forming crescent shapes, ridges, or long parallel lines. These formations are dynamic, slowly shifting while maintaining recognizable structures. Change here is continuous but controlled. Beneath the surface, roots spread wider rather than deeper. In dry environments, rain rarely penetrates far into the ground. Plants adapt by covering large horizontal areas, capturing as much moisture as possible when it arrives. Some desert trees, like acacias or mesquite, combine deep and shallow roots, accessing groundwater while still benefiting from surface rain. Their presence often signals hidden water below. Insects play a critical role in desert ecosystems. Pollination, decomposition, and soil aeration all depend on species that operate efficiently in extreme conditions. Their activity peaks during brief windows when temperatures allow. Reptiles, with their ability to regulate heat externally, thrive in these environments. They move deliberately, conserving energy and avoiding unnecessary exposure. Every action has purpose. Human technology increasingly mirrors desert efficiency. Passive cooling, solar energy, and minimal resource design draw inspiration from arid systems that have refined these principles over millennia. Desert architecture emphasizes shade, airflow, and thermal mass. Courtyards, thick walls, and narrow passages reduce heat absorption. These designs do not fight the environment, they cooperate with it. Sound during the day becomes sharper. With fewer surfaces to absorb it, even distant movement can be heard clearly. Yet overall, noise remains minimal, preserving a sense of calm. Time perception shifts again as daylight dominates. Without frequent reference points, hours feel less defined. This softened awareness supports mental rest, even during waking moments. Deserts are also archives of climate history. Layered sediments, salt deposits, and fossilized remains provide records of past environments. Scientists read these layers like pages, reconstructing ancient climates and transitions. Some deserts were once seas, forests, or grasslands. Their transformation occurred over immense timescales, reminding us that landscapes are temporary expressions of larger processes. As these thoughts continue to unfold, the desert remains consistent. It does not amplify, does not distract. It offers continuity. And within that continuity, the mind finds permission to slow down. Thoughts become fewer, spacing themselves naturally. Attention softens. The desert does not demand wakefulness. It gently supports rest. As the day stretches forward, the desert settles into a steady rhythm. The sun holds its position high above, and shadows shorten, gathering close to the objects that create them. Movement slows naturally, not by force but by design. At this hour, the desert appears almost suspended. Heat shimmers gently above the ground, softening the edges of distant hills. Vision adjusts, learning to accept blur as part of the landscape. Nothing demands sharp focus here. Under the surface, chemical processes continue quietly. Minerals expand, contract, and slowly rearrange. Salt crystals grow within tiny fractures in rock, gradually widening them. Over long periods, these microscopic actions reshape entire formations. Desert plateaus often form where erosion works evenly across broad areas. These flat expanses feel endless, yet each meter differs slightly in texture and composition. Uniformity here is an illusion created by scale. Clouds, when they appear, are usually thin and high. They offer little shade but signal distant changes in atmospheric conditions. Sometimes they drift for hours without consequence, sometimes they announce storms hundreds of kilometers away. In these environments, anticipation replaces reaction. Life prepares rather than responds. Energy is stored, behavior is adjusted, and systems remain flexible. Human presence in the desert has always required intention. Nothing can be left to chance. Water, shelter, and timing become conscious decisions rather than habits. This awareness simplifies priorities. Desert travelers often report altered states of thought. Repetition of scenery, steady motion, and minimal sensory input allow the mind to drift without losing clarity. Thoughts arise slowly and dissolve just as gently. There is a reason deserts feel timeless. Without rapid growth or decay, change becomes subtle. Days resemble one another and memory blends events together. This continuity calms the nervous system. Even colors fade gradually through the afternoon. Bright tones soften, becoming muted and warm. The land absorbs light without reflecting urgency. As evening approaches, shadows begin to stretch again. Temperature slowly declines, reversing the cycle without disruption. Animals that waited through the heat prepare to emerge once more. The desert does not mark time loudly. It does not announce transitions. It allows them to happen quietly without emphasis. And as this pattern repeats, day yielding to night, warmth yielding to cool, the mind follows the same path. Attention loosens. Breathing becomes slower without instruction. Awareness remains but effort fades. The desert continues to exist, unchanged by observation, steady in its rhythm. And within that steadiness, rest becomes natural, arriving not as an action, but as a continuation. As evening slowly unfolds, the desert begins another gentle transition. The light softens, shifting from bright clarity to warmer tones that stretch across the land. Rocks, sand, and distant ridges absorb this change without resistance, reflecting subtle shades of amber and gold. The air cools gradually. This cooling is not sudden. It is a slow release, allowing the environment to recalibrate itself. Heat that once pressed down now lifts quietly into the sky. With it, tension fades. Shadows grow longer again, reconnecting distant shapes. What appeared isolated during midday now feels part of a continuous surface. Separation dissolves into cohesion. Desert animals sense these shifts long before they become obvious. Activity resumes cautiously. Movement is measured, deliberate, and efficient. Nothing is wasted. Insects hum briefly, testing the air. Small mammals emerge, scanning the ground for food left behind by the day. Predators move silently, guided more by sound and vibration than sight. Plants respond as well. Some flowers open only at night, releasing faint scents that travel farther in cooler air. Pollinators tuned to these signals arrive precisely when needed. Timing here is exact. The desert sky deepens in color, moving through layers of blue and violet. Clouds, if present, catch the last light before fading into darkness. The horizon blurs, erasing sharp boundaries. Temperature differences between land and sky create gentle air currents. These currents carry warmth upward and cooler air downward, maintaining balance. The system corrects itself continuously. Human presence during this time often becomes quieter. Camps settle, fires burn low, voices soften. Even thoughts follow this pattern, lowering in volume and intensity. Historically, evening was the safest time for travel. Heat no longer threatened, visibility remained, and the land offered guidance through familiar silhouettes. Journeys planned around this rhythm aligned naturally with the environment. As night takes hold, stars begin to appear again. One by one, they reassert themselves, forming patterns that have guided navigation for thousands of years. Their positions feel reliable, unchanged. The desert at night expands perceptually. Distances seem larger, silence deeper. Without visual clutter, awareness widens. The mind stretches outward rather than inward. Sound becomes sparse. A distant call, a soft step, the movement of air across sand. Each sound exists fully without competition. The ground cools further, stabilizing temperature gradients. Rocks that stored heat now release it slowly, creating microclimates where animals rest and conserve energy. This nightly cycle reinforces a fundamental principle of the desert. Nothing is constant, yet everything is predictable. Change occurs but within known boundaries. Desert soils retain memory. Footprints, tracks, and disturbances remain visible for long periods. This persistence records presence without commentary. Evidence remains, but meaning is left to interpretation. Even human structures age differently here. Wood dries, metal oxidizes slowly, stone endures. Time leaves marks gently without haste. The absence of moisture reduces decay, extending existence. Objects last longer not because they are preserved intentionally, but because the environment allows it. Deserts teach patience without instruction. They do not reward speed or urgency. They respond to consistency, awareness, and restraint. Modern research increasingly studies desert adaptation for insight into sustainability. How to do more with less. How to maintain balance under constraint. How to endure without excess. Yet these lessons are not presented loudly. They exist quietly, available only to those who observe without expectation. As the night deepens, temperatures stabilize once more. The desert enters another pause, another equilibrium. Systems slow. Energy rests. And in this vast stillness, the mind naturally follows. Thoughts become fewer. Attention softens. There is no need to solve or decide. The desert does not demand sleep. It simply creates the conditions where rest feels appropriate. It remains open, expansive, unchanged, allowing awareness to drift gently without resistance, without effort. As the night moves forward, the desert becomes increasingly uniform in tone. Colors fade into shades of deep blue and soft gray. The ground, once textured and varied in daylight, now feels smoother, its details suggested rather than seen. The air grows denser as temperatures settle. Breathing feels slower, deeper without conscious adjustment. This is the desert at its most neutral state, neither warming nor cooling rapidly, simply holding balance. Stars continue their slow movement across the sky. Their paths are subtle, almost imperceptible yet constant. Over hours, entire constellations shift position, maintaining order while allowing change. The moon, when present, alters the landscape completely. Under moonlight, dunes appear solid and sculptural. Shadows sharpen again but softer, less defined. The desert becomes quieter still. Nocturnal animals operate within narrow temperature ranges. Their activity peaks briefly then fades. Energy conservation remains the guiding principle. Every movement has a reason. Burrows beneath the surface offer insulation. Just a short distance underground, temperature remains remarkably stable. These spaces protect life from extremes, creating small pockets of consistency. The desert floor absorbs and releases energy continuously. Even at night, microscopic interactions persist. Minerals contract, surfaces cool, and air currents adjust accordingly. In this environment, time is measured less by clocks and more by cycles. Light, temperature, and silence mark progress more accurately than numbers ever could. Human perception adapts. Without constant stimulation, the mind stops seeking novelty. Attention broadens then loosens. Awareness remains present but relaxed. This is why deserts are often chosen for observation, of stars, of weather, of self. Without interference, patterns reveal themselves naturally. Long-term desert dwellers learn to move slowly, speak less, and listen more. Communication becomes efficient, unnecessary words falling away. Even modern technology, when introduced here, must adapt. Machines require protection from dust and heat. Systems must be simplified to survive. Despite this, deserts are not hostile by nature. They are selective. They reward alignment rather than resistance. Morning will come again as it always does. Light will return, temperatures will rise, activity will resume. The cycle is reliable. But for now, the desert remains in this quiet phase. Nothing presses forward. Nothing pulls back. And within this steady pause, rest feels inevitable. The environment does not encourage alertness. It invites stillness. Thoughts drift like wind over sand, forming shapes briefly, then smoothing out again. Focus fades gently without force. The desert continues its silent work, maintaining balance, repeating patterns that have existed for ages. And as it does, the mind mirrors this rhythm, slowing naturally, settling into calm and finally into rest.